ISO-2002222 with the ISO headquarters. It's 8:36 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast in the United States of America. It's been a few days because it's been extremely slow in the ISO news world, but I want to thank Gummy, one of our subscribers. I want to thank him for sending me this on Telegram, so I wanted to read through this. We're not going to go through all 11 pages, but I would like to do is read like the first 2 or 3, and then I want to get your guys' input if you want me to continue. So this strategic business plan, ISO/TC 307, executive summary. Blockchain technology holds immense promise to revolutionize not only the financial domain, but a whole host of things from societal inclusion to efficiencies in government, health, and all areas of businesses. ISO/TC 307, blockchain and distributed ledger technologies has been set up to meet the growing need for standardization in this area by providing internationally agreed ways of working with it to improve security, privacy, and facilitate worldwide use of the technology through better interoperability. This is especially relevant due to the number of SMEs across various sectors that are developing blockchain and distributed ledger technologies as a product. Come here, buddy. Hold on, guys, one second. Sorry about that, guys. My son came and got me to do something. The scope of ISO/TC 307 reads standardization of blockchain technology and distributed ledger technologies. As of 2018, March 13th, the standardization work of ISO/TC 307 has been divided into 6 groups: WG1 Foundation, WG2 Security, Privacy, and Identity, WG3 Smart Contracts and their Applications, SG2 Use Cases, SG6 Governance, SG7 Interoperability. Blockchain and distributed ledger technologies is a rapidly evolving and expanding area. The need for collaboration and cooperation has been identified in ISO/TC 307 as liaising with relevant ISO and IEC committees as well as external organizations to minimize any overlap. So ISO technical committees and business planning. The extension of formal business planning to ISO technical committees, ISO TCs, is an important measure which forms part of a major review of business. The aim is to align the ISO work programming with express business environment needs and trends, and to allow ISO TCs to prioritize among different projects. To identify the benefits expected from the availability of international standards, and to ensure adequate resources for projects throughout their development. International standardization and role of the ISO. The foremost aim of international standardization is to facilitate the exchange of goods and services through the elimination of technical barriers to trade. 3 bodies are responsible for the planning, development, and adoption of international standards. ISO, International Organization for Standardization, is responsible for all sectors including electronical, which is the responsibility of IEC, International Electronical Committee, and most of telecommunications technologies, which are largely the responsibility of ITU, International Telecommunications Union. So if you guys want to know the nooks and cranny of the ISO and what I would consider like the white papers of the ISO, I mean, you've come to the right place. ISO is a legal association, the members of which are the national standards bodies, NSPs, of some 164 countries, organizations representing social and economic interests at the international level, supported by a central secretariat based in Geneva, Switzerland. The principal deliverable of ISO is the international standard. An international standard embodies the essential principles of global openness and transparency, consensus, and technical coherence. These are safeguarded through its development in an ISO technical committee, ISO TC, representative of all interested parties, supported by a public comment phase, the ISO technical inquiry, ISO and its technical committees, and also able to offer the ISO technical specification, ISO TS, the ISO public available specification ISO PAC and the ISO technical report ISO-TR as solutions to market needs. These ISO products represent lower levels of consensus and have therefore not the same status as an international standard. ISO offers also the International Workshop Agreement IWA as a deliverable which aims to bridge the gap between the activities of consortia and the formal process of standardization represented by ISO and its national members. An important distinction is that the IWA is developed by the ISO workshops and fora, comprising only participants with direct interest, and so it is not accorded the status of an international standard. So for everybody who's watching from my XRP Future Millionaire page, I'm doing a bonus content so you can see what I do on this ISO headquarters. We're almost to 730 subscribers, and we're growing rapidly, but everybody who believes in the ISO 20022, XRP, XLM, Doge, Shiba, Algo, IOTA, ADA, XDC, these ISO coins, Quant. This is very important for you. So I'm going to do this in parts on my ISO headquarters page, but I'm going to do the first part. I'm going to do some bonus content so you can see the first part of this also on my XR Future Millionaire page. So I just want you guys to see it's a lot more than just the charts. With T-Speak at 222, I'm across different ways on YouTube, and I believe this station will be one that ends up growing rapidly in the future. So, business environment of the ISO TC. What you doing? The following political, economic, technical, regulatory, legal, and social dynamics. So this is the description of business environment. Describe the business environment of the industry sector, products, materials, disciplines, or practices related to the scope of the ISO-TC. Hold on, Julie. I need help.
Sorry.
Julie, no, don't be sorry. I'm just glad you actually made it out here. Now you gotta go back. So, where are we at? And they may significantly influence how the relevant standards development process are conducted and the content of the resulting standards. ISO TC 307 is responsible for standardization in relation to blockchain and distributed ledger technologies, DLT. This may include standards relating to terminology reference, architecture, security and privacy, identity, smart contract governance, and interoperability for blockchain and DLT, as well as standards specific to industry sectors and generic government requirements. Blockchain and DLT are still in early stages of development and implementation, but they are developing rapidly and need standards quickly. They show much potential because they provide capabilities that cannot normally be met in any other way, but they require other technologies to be able to operate. It is this linkage and mutual dependency with other technologies that necessitates a mutual dependency and interoperability of standards. These ISO TC 307 standards will be interoperable with and supportive of other relevant standards. Operational blockchain and DLT implementation already exists at scale with potential applications across all industry sectors. Financial and payment systems, border controls, internet governance and operations, logistics, expert controls, patient records, and more in general, wherever requirements for traceability, accountability, regulatory compliance, and authoritative data exist. Ensure that any standards developed are sufficiently flexible so as to be applicable to the broad range of potential applications. Standards will then need to be continually updated in a feedback loop with governments and the private sector to ensure ISO TC 307 is developing standards that meet their needs. The work plan for ISO/TC 307 should be requirements led based on a continually updated strategic context. Sorry guys, I literally just helped Julie read that. Made sure my son was covered up because he's starting to fall asleep. And now I'm back to my normal spot where I sit. I've been on the move this entire update so far, so 9.5 minutes in, I feel better. Let's take a drink of this water real quick. The broad scope of application for blockchain and DLT also means that this work is a broad base of affected stakeholders. This includes governments and the private sector broadly, with particular relevance for the finance and information technology industries. Also, manufacturers and suppliers of physical and virtual products and assets, those working or specializing in data and records management, as well as citizens and consumers. The majority of blockchain and DLT will operate in situations involving personal, private, company, government, or otherwise sensitive data, all subject to regulation. Most notable are those blockchain and DLT involving financial activity and information security, because they are ubiquitous across all industry and government organizations. Globally significant regulations today that are relevant to blockchain and DLT include the EU General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, which sets a benchmark for the protection of personal data and privacy. Its scope is any system including personal data, even pseudonymized. It recognizes requirements for public safety and other fundamental human rights. EU Payment Services Directive 2, which affects all financial institutions, commercial organizations, and retail services. It requires strong customer authentication. This is based on G20 requirements. EU Anti-Money Laundering Directive 4, which increases the scope and depth of anti-money laundering measures. It also includes virtual currencies based on blockchain and DLT. This is based on G20 requirements. Consequently, standards for information security and privacy will be of paramount importance to any user or developer of the technology, including a legal requirement to ensure that data is kept up to date. Another application of blockchain DLT is the relation to smart contracts. These are already having implications in the legal sphere, with issues around the language use, capability with existing legal framework, jurisdictional differences, enforceability, and awareness of companies, government, and industry employees, citizens, and a consumer regarding the legal standing of these smart contracts, as well as their use in automated and artificial intelligence-based systems and services. Other concerns in relation to blockchain and DLT include aspects such as criminal misuse, consumption of energy, governance, immutability, and as both a benefit and risk, public safety, consumers' protection, and lack of public understanding. Though no ISO standards currently exist for blockchain and DLT, a number of related standards have been identified that the group will need to be conscious of in development of standards from blockchain and DLT. These include, at a minimum, ISO-20022 Series Financial Services Universal Financial Industry Method Scheme, ISO IEC 17788 Information Technology Cloud Computing Overview and Vocabulary, ISO IEC 17789 Information Technology Cloud Computing Reference Architecture, ISO IEC 18384 Series Information Technology Reference Architecture for Service-Oriented Architecture, ISO IEC 19086 Information Technology Cloud Computing Service Level Agreement SLA Framework, ISO IEC 27000 Series Information Technology Security Techniques with Profile Standards and for many industries, ISO 29000 Series on Identity Management and Privacy, ISO 31000 Series Risk Management Principles and Guidelines, ISO 10962 Series Securities and Related Financial Instruments, ISO 6166 Series Securities and Related Financial Instruments, ISO IEC 38500 Series Information Technology, Governance of IT for the Organization, ISO IEC JTC1 SC17, Standards on Identity-Related Documents, including passports and driving licenses. ITUT has recommendations that are relevant to ISO TC 307, particularly on the structured and operation of networks and on cybersecurity and cyber incident management. IETF OASIS and W3C also have standards that are relevant to ISO TC 307, including detailed specifications for the operation of internet, cyber threat intelligence, and supply chain traceability and quality assurance. 2.2 Quantitative Indicators of the Business Environment. Quantitative indicators describe the business environment in order to provide adequate information to support actions of the ISO-TC. Indicators may include adoptions and use of ISO/TC 307 standards, ongoing engagement of industry and stakeholders with ISO-TC 307, industry and global trends in relation to blockchain and DLT. In order to measure the adoption and use of ISO-TC 307 standards, as well as ongoing engagement of ISO-TC 307 with appropriate industry and stakeholders, the technical committee may review indicators such as sales of ISO-TC 307 standards and other deliverabilities, number of participating and observing ISO member bodies on the TC, and number of active mirror committees at national level, number of standards adopted by ISO member bodies and referenced in national programmes, stakeholder balance in national mirror committees and delegation for TC meetings, number of organizations implementing or certifying to standards, number of organizations in liaison to ISO TC 307 and actively participating, number of standards and other deliverabilities translated for uses in ISO member body countries and other local languages, continuity of active participation by ISO member bodies in work of ISO TC 307, number of standards used in regulations or market-driven contracts at the national and international level, conformance by service providers to ISO TC 307 standards, number of standards under the work programming of ISO TC 307, and speed of developing and updating standards with the portfolio of ISO TC 307, industry and global trends which may serve as quantitative indicators of the business environment may include number of real-world applications of blockchain and DLT beyond proof of concept stage, number of companies including SMEs offering blockchain or DLT as a product or service, estimated value of digital currency stored in blockchain or DLT, estimated value of assets stored in blockchain or DLT, estimated number of transactions having taken place on blockchain or DLT. In gathering data regarding the above areas, ISO TC 307 will consider running a survey of participating and observing members for each ISO member body to complete. The survey will gather data on aspects such as extent of adoption, use of standards nationally, and status of the market in their country, among the other aspects as detailed above. Some data may be more difficult to gather, in particular that around the value of assets and or digital currency held in blockchain and DLT. ISO TC 307 will explore through its members base the extent to which public reporting is available regarding the above, and may need to draw on the results of other industry surveys or standards undertaken that have access to such data. Benefits expected from the work of the ISO-TC. Benefits expected to be realized due to the standardization for blockchain and DLT include support of innovation, competition, governance, development, and growth in the field, especially in cross-organization, cross-border usage scenarios to improve services for citizens, unified terminology and reference architecture in the field, increased understanding and adoption confidence of blockchain and DLT, a potential reference or repository for use case applications for guiding adoption, increased adoption of blockchain and DLT by industry and government, facilitation of compatibility between the technology and legal frameworks across a range of jurisdictions, aiding users and purchasers in being able to validate the quality of blockchain and DLT available in the market. For service providers, improve trust and reputation with a reduction in perceived risk. Interoperability between different ledger technology and between ledger technologies and other system components, removing barriers to entry by facilitating accelerated time to market, lowered risk of getting locked in to particular technical or non-standardized approaches which may prove unsuccessful or problematic in the future, increased investment in blockchain and DLT, improved security and privacy outcomes through the provision of robust requirements leading also to consumer confidence in these technologies, reduce cost of implementation by providing transparent baseline requirements. So here's the presentation. We're just going to go through this whole thing. Presentation and participation in the ISO-TC membership. So there's the memberships and liaisons can be found if you want to see the committee's homepage. So here's the breakdown by region. Africa, 0 P members, 1 O members. Americans, 4 P members, 2 O members. Asia Pacific, 7 P members, 5 O members. Europe, 20 P members, 4 O members. Middle East, 0 P members, 2 O members. For the purposes of this table, Russia has been classified as part of Europe. Analysis. From the above, it can be seen that the current membership of ISO-TC 307 is heavily in favor of developed members with a dominant European presence amongst the participating members and participating members from North America being the United States and Canada. The other trend that emerges is a heavy presence in the Asia-Pacific region, with a significant number of participating and observing members across varying development statuses in the region. This representation is reflective of the highly technical nature of the work, with heavier participation from nations with higher levels of industry and expertise in this area, leading to the heavy imbalance towards developed nations in Europe and North America and those in transition in the Asia-Pacific. Members have noted that Estonia stands out as exclusion from the list and have sought to encourage participation from this member as a result. There is notably little participation on the committee from Central and South America, Africa, with only Brazil, P member, Jamaica, P member, South Africa, P member, Argentina, O member, and Uruguay, O member. Representing these regions, the Middle East also has limited participation so far, with just Israel and Iran listed both O members. Heavier participation should be encouraged in these regions in the Secretariat member body. Australia may wish to consider a twinning arrangement with another member in order to encourage this. In terms of liaisons, ISO-TC 307 has 5 external liaisons to date, with SWIFT the European Commission, the International Federation of Surveyors, the International Telecommunications Union, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. There has been much interest from industry and external organizations in liaising to ISO TC 307. The amount of interest indicates that industry is aware of the establishment of ISO TC 307 and is keen to be involved in the process. In addition, ISO TC 307 is actively engaging with relevant organizations and bodies in the market and industry to encourage liaisons and ensure that the work developed by ISO TC 307 and remains relevant. Appropriate liaisons have been established internationally with other ISO and ISO IEC committees. And again, this list is expected to grow a little over time. Individual members of ISO TC 307 have displayed an eagerness to work collaboratively with ISO, IEC committees and avoid any duplication of work. Objectives of the ISO TC and strategies for their achievement. And guys, anybody, like I said, who's into the ISO coins, this is imperative that you join my ISO headquarters. Obviously, if you're watching on the ISO headquarters, you're 10 steps ahead. But if you're on my XRP Future Millionaire page and you're watching this bonus content, highly consider looking in the video description below and joining the ISO headquarters. It's one of the best things you can ever do to stay ahead of the implementation and the news. ISO TC, or defined objectives of the ISO TC. ISO TC 307 will produce a set of international standards and report that will encourage adoption of blockchain and DLT and support innovation, governance and development in the industry. These international standards and reports will include topics and support both cross-organizations, cross-border usage scenarios. The committee aims to have these international standards and reports available no later than 2021. Develop a terminology international standard that will provide a unified vocabulary for blockchain and DLT. The committee aims to have this international standard available no later than 2020. Develop a reference architecture international standard that will provide a unified view of blockchain and DLT. The committee aims to have this international standard available no later than 2021. Develop a repository of use cases to aid in understanding the applications and implementations of blockchain and DLT. This repository will be an ongoing initiative, elaborative on a package of international standards and technical specifications to address the compatibility between technology and legal frameworks to aid in the adoption of blockchain and DLT by industry and government, which will be available by 2021. Produce technical reports in the areas of security, privacy, and identify, then investigate the potential international standards that would need to be developed as the aspects are better defined and identified. Address interoperability between different ledger technologies and between ledger technologies and other system components as the aspects and better defined. Identity strategies to achieve the ISO TC's defined objectives. Strategies to be employed by ISO TC 307 in achieving the above listed objectives include the following. Prioritize with ISO TC 307 such as terminology and reference architecture as foundational concepts for the other standards to build upon. Study groups will be formed as appropriate to investigate potential areas for standardization in blockchain and DLT. Collaborate with other ISO committees, IEC, and SDOs to avoid duplication of work. Leverage related work where applicable from both other ISO and ISO/IEC committees and from industry and the market more broadly. Conduct ongoing market and industry surveillance of use cases applications to ensure standards developed are not exclusive to particular industries. Develop technical reports where applicable to assist in understanding of blockchain and DLT. To rapidly progress the work of ISO TC 307, the TC has agreed on an ambiguous meeting schedule for more information, blah, blah, blah. Factors affecting completion and implementation of the ISO TC work programming. Factors that have the potential to negatively impact the work of ISO TC 307 include those that are characteristic of standardization and those that are industry specific. The two types of risk have been grouped accordingly below. Factors characteristics of standardization that could affect the work of ISO TC 307 include the ISO committee chairperson, security convener, or project leader positions are vacant. Expert resources are not sufficiently available for certain projects. Specific expertise for a project is lacking, which could affect the project's development as well as the credibility of the resulting standard in the business community. Validation of a test method is dependent upon funding being available to undertake the necessary pre-co-normative research. Legal regulatory issues such as uncertainties regarding a possible EC directive or jurisdictional requirements and conflicts, which in turn may necessitate modifications of the content and target dates for projects in the work program. members may have difficulty reaching consensus due to the diverse geopolitical and market interest presents. Factors that are industry specific that could affect the work of ISO TC 307 include the current market environment for blockchain and DLT is dominated by both open source and proprietary projects. These groups may be unwilling to conform to ISO standards and or see little value in doing so. Parallel industry-led standardization initiatives in specific market sectors may lead to duplication or conflict. The field of blockchain and DLT is a rapidly changing one, with much innovative work being conducted by small startups globally. These groups may see standards are stifling innovation or creativity. The blockchain and DLT industry is one of that is very fragmented, addressing many different problems. Additionally, the industry draws on some technologies that are already standardized. This may present a challenge in being able to produce a cohesive set of standards relevant to all stakeholders and that are compatible with and cognizant of existing standards, technologies, and use. For some existing industries, there is resistance to blockchain and DLT and of themselves as they present a threat to certain industries and may be disruptive. Examples may be in the areas of logistics or online services. In areas such as smart contracts, there are legal implications of this technology. The standards, therefore, need to ensure they are compatible with legislative requirements across a range of jurisdictions. Given the global nature of ISO standards process, and specifically ISO TC 307, this may prove an insurmountable challenge. Use case applications that have a very high transaction rate, for example, in the Internet of Things, which TGB's in, or in the financial trading, may not be able to use this technology with the potential that other alternatives emerge as a result. In page 11 of 11, structure current projects and publications of the ISO-TC. So you can get more information online. You can go to www.iso.org/committee/626604.html. I'm sure that 666 is just one big coincidence. Click on the tabs. You can blah, 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 blah. So I want to thank everybody for tuning into this update. I think it's in peril for us to be on the same page in the ISO. And basically what you're hearing here, a lot of things going on with the blockchain technology, a lot to do with the ISO TC 307 and distributed ledger technologies. I mean, there's a lot of things with the governance body, smart contracts, use cases, interoperability, foundations, security, privacy. We went over a lot with business environments. All the ISO components. We went through the different technologies, the frameworks. We went through risk management, securities. So if you have to watch this twice, this has been one hell of a video, and I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Like I said, if you're part of the XRP Future Millionaire page, you really need to join this channel, the ISO headquarters. If we want to take a moment to hit the like button while I'm still here, I would really appreciate that. And also, when you guys are paying attention to the ISO, don't think about today. Don't think about tomorrow. Don't think about what next week. When you're focused on this right now, especially my XRP Future Millionaire page, because my ISO channel knows this. My ISO headquarters is a very smart group, ahead of their time. But my XRP Future Millionaire page, the ISO implementation will happen, and it can't start before it's already starting, but the actual flip of the switch can't happen until November of 2022. And it's going to be either the second or third weekend or whatever. There's an odd day off because it can't be on the 2 days for Saturday and Sunday. So it's probably going to be the start up a week or end of a week. It's a weird day, but it's going to be one of the odd weeks of November. And it's this year, 2022. So that's something that's in place. I have a whole bunch of content here on my ISO headquarters page. If you're new and you've never seen it before, there's a lot of stuff. It's been very slow though the last few days, so we haven't been able to really do much. Look at that. I never even switched over for my ISO related warning about the ISO Trojan horse. Isn't that crazy? That's an awesome article too. I can't believe I never did that. See, I get so busy sometimes I forget. Oh no, see, I switched it. Okay, I was gonna say I switched it re-uploaded. I was going to say, how could I not put that out? That would have been... So that's what I put there. And then you can see the ISO real-time payments, the ISO 20022 global BISS, the BIS, the Intel target to ISO-20022 migration, and then it shows how payments will be processed in MX in November 2022. We talk about ASCX9 and the ISO-200 flip of the switch and how they signed 8 new members. And then that's one you need to watch from 11 days ago. It actually talks about the single day flip of the switch. So that is one that all my members from XRP Future Millionaire go back and watch. Stay blessed, everybody.